Hello everybody, welcome to Red Tool House. Everybody wants to find a great deal on rural land right now. So much that it's really driving up the price of land all across the country. Now I want to say there are still good deals out there where it's not super inflated, but you just got to do the work to find it. On today's video, I want to explain why I can't find land for you, but I can help you find it for yourself. So if you're familiar with our channel, you've seen videos that we do from time to time where we actually go out and we tour land and kind of detail or feature that here on the channel. That land is presented to me by one of you, the viewers. You all have found that land, one person's found that land and say, hey Troy, would you go check this out? So far to date, we've done over 10 properties that we've toured, and I think I've done a video on almost all of them. Some I didn't, some they requested I not. But we've been able to tour 10 different properties here in the state to that degree. So through the course of those videos, we've been able to show you land that was very rural, land that was very raw, land that maybe had a dwelling, land that maybe had a dwelling that wasn't that quite habitable, and some that was just dilapidated ruins. We showed some land that was very, very steep and very tough to do anything with, very awkward land. And then some land, of course, that had some great tillable acreage. So I want to briefly explain how this process works, how we actually go about doing a video about land like that. Well, the first thing that has to happen is one of you has to reach out to me and say, hey, I found a piece of land that I think I'm interested in. I can't justify, or I don't have the time, or I can't afford to come to West Virginia this time to look at it. Would you be my eyes and look at this land for me? That's the first thing that has to happen. And then what we do, we obviously charge a fee because it takes time and money for us to get into a vehicle and drive somewhere across the state to do that. So we go to the land, we walk the land, we shoot video as we do. I come back, I edit all that video. I produce a video that then I upload to the client, and it's a much, much larger video. And then after the client's had a chance to watch the video, we have a phone conversation, a consultation where we discuss what we've both have seen and then some takeaways, pros and cons, those type of things. And then what you see on YouTube is a much, much more condensed version of that. Instead of being hours of video footage, you may see a 20-minute video. So these videos surprisingly have become really popular on our channel. In fact, way more popular than I ever dreamed they would. And while I really enjoy doing it, with the tons of views that come from that, there's also tons of responses and tons of inquiries. And if I could summarize the majority of those inquiries in one statement, it would be, Troy, help me find a really nice piece of land really cheap, and go. And that's really where the problem starts. So I want to first give you 5 reasons why I can't do that, why it's not that simple. But I don't want to just end this video negative. I also want to give you 5 great tips, what I think are great tips, to help you find that land yourself. So let's jump in. Look at this beautiful little white oak tree behind me. It's about 6 inches in diameter. And when I first moved here 22 years ago and started clearing this land, I purposely left this white oak because I knew at some point it was going to be a gorgeous shade tree for this little area where we used to have a campfire. We used to hang out here, do campfires. And it's just, I love it, love it. It's taken 22 years to see it get to the size that it casts shade, but patience pays off. Okay, to our list. Number one is I just can't go looking for land for you. You have to hire me to be your eyes to look at a specific piece of land. It's not feasible for me just to travel around the state and find raw pieces of land that are either publicly listed or not, and then just do a video on it, or to call you and say, hey, I think you may be interested in that. That's just not feasible. And even if it was, land is on the move so rapidly right now that even if I were to find 3 ideal tracks for whomever, by the time I do videos and do the features of those, and by the time I get them uploaded to the client and ready to look at, most likely those tracks would be gone if they were listed publicly. So the feasibility just doesn't work in that direction. I can't just say, oh yeah, here's a whole inventory of land that you should consider. Number two is kind of simple and kind of obvious, but number two is I'm not a realtor. I'm not licensed. I don't have access to any more information than you all do. So if I were to start looking for land for you, the first thing I would do would consult Google, just like you would, and start looking at those things. So I don't have any inside tricks there. I don't have any listings that you don't have access to, or secret listings hidden somewhere. That's just not how it works. Really, I'm just a country boy that has spent most of his life in this state, loves this state, and has walked pretty much most of it. I've been all over a lot of West Virginia, so I have an opinion and I have a preference about the different parts and the uniqueness of this state. Well, number three is this is not a simple process, of course. So the biggest issue is I have no idea what a typical person is looking for. So if somebody would just call me and say, hey, find me a nice piece of land, there's just so many questions that come to mind. Well, how much land are you looking for? What do you want to do with the land? What does the land have to have? Does it have to have amenities? Does it have to have a house? Is it something you're going to do off grid so you don't really care about things? Are you retired, or are you going to still need a day job? So do you need a commutable distance to some local town that's going to be able to employ you? There's just so many factors that go into that by the time I'd research all of those details, then that would take a very long time, and of course that would cost more, obviously, if we tied up all that time. Well, number four is actually quite simple. I would never recommend a piece of land if I didn't step foot on it. Now, I've had some people send me some links or whatever, say, hey, what do you think of these pictures or whatever? And I'll give some basic opinion, but I would never say, absolutely, you should do this, you should spend your hard-earned money, you should go into debt or whatever to buy this land. I would want to be on the land, to walk it, make sure I fully understand what's there. So honestly, I just can't go to land and start walking all over and say, here's a piece I really recommend. It's worth this $2,000 per acre, or $5,000 an acre, or $500 an acre, unless I was on it. So again, unless there's something that's drawing me to there, I really just can't feasibly go start walking random pieces of land and documenting it. Now, number five is actually kind of interesting, and I want your all's input, so be ready to comment below. So number five is, even if there are listings that I see that are kind of unique to West Virginia, I can't just create a video and throw that out there. It's one of those things where, for example, I've got a good friend who right now, he has about 10 property listings, and all of them are raw pieces of land, but they're very reasonably priced. We're talking less than $3,000 an acre. And if I was to go to one of those properties right now and do a video, and if that video would have the popularity that some of these videos had, like at the time of recording this, my video that I did where the guy got the 43 acres in Clay County for $10,000, it's over 400,000 views. So even if 1% of the people that watched that video called my friend's office to say, hey, I'm interested in that land, that's 4,000 phone calls that he would get. So he would track me down and try to murder me for blowing up his phone. It just wouldn't be possible for him to respond to that many calls. Now, I'm not saying that I'm some big dude and I'm going to create too much business for somebody, but it just doesn't make sense to do that. There's a lot of tire kickers, there's a lot of window shoppers when it comes to land. In fact, in trying to think of that, how we could possibly ever do something like that, the only thing that comes to mind is that to be able to find the contact information, to get the contact information, be put up some sort of paywall. That, hey, you got to pay X amount of dollars before you can get this information. So the old skin in the game idea, that if you invest in something, then you get the contact information. But to me, that just seems kind of slimy, that, hey, here's Troy detailing some property that's really nice, and oh, by the way, if you're interested in it, you got to pay him to get the contact information. It just doesn't pass the sniff test for me. I don't like the sound of that. Even if I was to take all that money and just donate it to the nonprofit that I do some work for, it just doesn't seem right. But comment below and let me know what you think of that. Let me know if you think that's kind of shady, because I think it is. Well, as promised, I don't want to end this video on a negative of all the things that I can't do or won't do for you guys that are still trying to find the great deal on land. I want to see as many people get their homestead land, their small farm land, do whatever, get out of the major urban areas. And I would love to see a lot of people come to West Virginia. I love this state. It's a shrinking population, so I would like to see that changed. So I want to give you 5 what I consider great tips that you need to consider as you look for land, and preferably here in West Virginia. So number 1 is avoid the big listings. Big listings mean big money. So if you're on the big websites like the LandWatch websites, yeah, there's great parcels there, and if you've got a huge budget, then okay, check that out. But those listings are big money. The way property is going right now, if they're listed on sites like that, then I guarantee you they have maximized the potential of that land. So that per acreage price is at the highest it could possibly be for the market. So you may be able to research that pretty easily because all that information's there, but you're going to pay for it. You're going to have what you get in convenience, you're going to pay in per acreage. So just keep that in mind. Maybe avoid the big guys in that situation. All right, so number 2, and I cannot stress this enough, is look for absentee land ownership. That's really how we did ours 22 years ago, with a little variation, but I've covered this in detail in episode 48, where we talk about using tax data to be able to find absentee landowners. And I'll link to that here, and also be a link down in the video description so you can click on it after you finish watching this video. But that video, I'll go into full detail of how you do that. And you may think, yeah, watch that, Troy, and that's voodoo. There's no way that works. I want to read to you verbatim a comment I got just a week or so ago pertaining to that very process. I found this video in October of 2020 and started looking for land via online plat books. I spent so many hours looking and looking. I made sure the owner's address was always different than the property address. No marshland, swamps, etc. I sent 21 letters, called once, got 4 responses. I never even went to most of these places since they were 3 to 6 hours away. Just looked on Google Maps as good as I could and the plat book aerial photography. I just bought a piece of land last weekend that had a well, septic, nice garage, and a rundown trailer house $20K below market value and about $40K cheaper than similar properties in the area for sale. I'm so happy you made this video. I would never have thought to look for land this way. Thank you. When I read that, I just filled my heart with joy. That was great to read. And I could just simply say, if you're going to do the work, if you want to do the work, it could pay off for you. So that person just sat down and wrote 21 letters after doing his research, all on the computer. He didn't have to get up and go anywhere, and got 4 responses, and one of which paid off, and he got a great deal on a piece of land. So it can be done. You just have to do the work. So go watch episode 48 if you're not sure what I'm talking about. All right, number 3, I call this a power tip because I don't think many people do it. Maybe they do. But it's amazing how much land is listed for sale by owner. So there's a spider crawling up my elbow right now, so pause with me 1 second. Go on, dude. For sale by owner. A lot of people list it because they don't want to mess with realtors at that time. So what do? Well, they put a sign out in the front yard and expect people to drive by, or they put it in the local ad bulletin, or Craigslist or Facebook. It's amazing how many people put their property on Facebook. So if you go to Facebook Marketplace, if you have a Facebook account, check that out. Go to Facebook Marketplace and search land for sale, but change up in the right-hand corner there. You're going to see the little geographic pin where it's going to search in your area. Change that pin. So if you're sitting in Scottsdale, Arizona, like a friend of ours, and you are looking for land in West Virginia, go to Marketplace, and it's automatically going to draw that circle around Scottsdale. Change, put in Charleston, West Virginia, Elkins, West Virginia, Marlinton, West Virginia, Morgantown, West Virginia, some of these bigger towns, and it'll draw a circle around there, and you can even change the radius. And then you're searching for land for sale in those areas, not in your hometown area. And you'll be amazed the amount of land that pops up. I just did that just to make sure before shooting this video, and found 15, 20 parcels for sale by owner that were all under $3,000 an acre. So It's out there, people. You just got to look. Number 4, and this is unique to West Virginia, but it applies to these other rural states where you're looking for cheaper land, is don't listen to the naysayers. And by that I mean the people that say, oh yeah, you got a great deal on land, but it's in West Virginia. I'd never live in West Virginia. Okay, that's fine. But just because West Virginia gets a bad rap, everybody wants to make a joke about it. We aren't dead last in everything. In fact, we're not really dead last in anything. Now, we're close to dead last. But West Virginia is a beautiful state. It's a shrinking population. People are leaving the state. So that tells you something. Why are people leaving the state? Because they don't have the opportunity that they feel they need. If you're in a position where you're not playing the game, you're not chasing the rat race, then that doesn't really apply to you. If you're going to go off-grid, or you're retired, or you're going to opt out of the system, then you're the fish swimming upstream there a little bit. You're going in a different direction. People say, well, West Virginia has a drug problem. Guess what? Every place has a drug problem. It's a pandemic that's sweeping our country and has for decades. So it's an issue everywhere. West Virginia is a very large state relative to the states around it, and it has 1.6 million people. That's like a fourth of the size of the metro area of Atlanta in the entire state. So it's one of those things, yeah, people may be a little rough around the edges, you know, the dregs of society, but chances are you're not going to run into them because you're not overlapping. And I'll say, for every person in West Virginia you think is a thief or a drug addict or a meth head or whatever stereotype you want to use, there are 5 to 10 people that will give the shirt off their back to you. They'll bend over backwards to help you out, and they represent the true meaning of being neighborly. That's why I'm still in this state, and that's why I love it. The state has an incredible amount of natural resources. You can see I'm just standing here outside of the house, and the woods that I have, the grass. We grow things here in West Virginia because it rains. We get almost as much rain as Seattle. So we don't have a water issue. We have natural resources. We have good soil if you build it up. There's just all kinds of things, benefits to West Virginia. So one comment that was made on the video I did where the guy got 43 acres for $10,000 was somebody said, oh yeah, but just wait, the property taxes are going to kill you. The cost of living in West Virginia is much cheaper than most states. So just an example, this guy thought, well, the property tax on 43 acres is going to be so much that it blows that deal out of the water. Well, I know that property like that in that county, the property tax is less than $400 a year. Property tax I pay on this 100 acres with a 2,500 square foot house, all my outbuildings and all that, still less than $1,000 a year. So property tax, while taxation's theft, it's not a huge issue. It's not as expensive as, say, when I lived in Florida on an 1/8 acre with a little 1,200 square foot house. I paid more in property tax then, back in 1995, than I do here, present day. All right, so my last tip is kind of the obvious, but it's the frame of mind you got to be in, and that's manage expectations. Rural land is rural for a reason. Cheap land is cheap for a reason. And you've got to recognize that. If you want something that's really nice, got all the amenities, it's wooded, it's got some cleared land, it's just 5 minutes from Walmart and the restaurants and all that, guess what? You don't want a raw piece of land. You want a park inside a suburban or urban area. So you got to manage that. Okay, if I'm going to find a rural piece of land in the middle of nowhere, it's in the middle of nowhere. So what goes along with that? You know, long drives, inconveniences with weather and utilities, expenses, maybe the land's trash, so you have to get garbage off of it like we did. You know, this land was absolutely gutted. It took us years to get it cleaned up. But we were able to get it cleaned up with literally investing blood, sweat, and tears to produce what we have now. I'd like to think that I've greatly increased the property value of this land should the time come, or when the time comes for me to sell it and move on, or when the time comes for Kelly to put me in the ground. After I die, of course. She's not planning on knocking me off anytime soon. So manage your expectations. You can't have everything. It's not a perfect storm there. If you do, you pay for having everything. Be prepared to do the work and be prepared to invest time into seeing your dream come to fruition. Well, I hope this video helps, and I hope, with all the comments I get, I can't respond to all of them where people are asking, hey, find me some land, find me some land. I'm not ignoring you. It's just one of those things that's not feasible. So hopefully this video answers all those comments and addresses that. I hope this motivates the right person to look for land. And I hate to be blunt like that, but just double check to make sure you're not in love with the dream or the idea of homesteading or living rural versus really wanting to do that. If you're waiting for something to be handed to you, then maybe you don't have the right temperament to work a piece of land, even if somebody delivered it to you on a silver platter. Well, if you found a piece of land and you would like for me to put some eyeballs on it, then obviously just reach out to me. You can go to redtoolhouse.com, use our contact form, and send me some basic info. We can get a dialogue going there and see if it's something we can go check out for you. Love to see more people with homesteading in mind move to West Virginia. All right, take care, everybody.